What is an oligarchy? Let's talk about it, but first hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so you stay educated on how your money works. When you hear the word oligarchy, you very well may think of the age-old political system that has lorded over dozens of civilizations. It's important to understand how different styles of government operate, and to be able to recognize them when they may not be too obvious. But while democracies or monarchies are among the most popular forms of government, oligarchies have had a fascinating historical and present-day run. But what is an oligarchy anyway? The word oligarchy comes from the Greek word oligarchos, meaning few to rule or command. An oligarchy is a government by the few, being a small group that exercise control especially for corrupt and selfish purposes. Given the dictionary definition, the term seems to carry a negative connotation. But how does this system work? An oligarchy is a system of government where the few, be it families, businesses, scholars, or individuals, rule. However, in many cases, even governments that have democracies or monarchies actually have oligarchies controlling them. In this case, a government may be structured as having a democratic system, but is actually influenced by rich, powerful, or persuasive people, families, or corporations that can levy a good amount of authority. Along the same lines, oligarchies pose a great threat to free market practices as they can decide to change or fix trading and economic regulations to benefit themselves. Often, oligarchies can collude to fix prices to violate other healthy economic standards. So let's talk about an oligarchy versus a plutocracy. While the members of an oligarchy could either be wealthy or not, a plutocracy is an oligarchy just with rich members. Many countries may be considered plutocracies for this reason, where the wealthy are ruling or heavily influencing policy and operations. What about oligarchy versus aristocracy? While a plutocracy is ruled by the wealthy, aristocracy is ruled by the elite. Despite being its own system in and of itself, aristocracies can often accompany other systems like monarchies, where the socially elite are influencing a monarch. Still, much like plutocracy, an aristocracy is a type of oligarchy, and therefore both can be considered subsets. So how are oligarchies formed and why? Historically, oligarchies have formed for many reasons, but mostly when an elite class, either those who are very skilled or informed in certain areas, very rich or very powerful by other means, decide to take over control of a government or corporation. In democracies, oligarchies can form when the general population would rather trust those who pose to be better equipped to lead than those in charge. Or oligarchies can form in a democracy when the people aren't actively involved in government or are facing a crisis. Still, more traditionally, oligarchies have formed and usurped power of ineffectual leaders including kings and tyrants. So what are the pros and cons of oligarchies? Here's a question: are oligarchies always bad? While there certainly are negative aspects of oligarchies, there are some positive ones too. One of the main pros of oligarchy is that it puts power in the hands of people who are often experts and can make informed decisions for the populace. It therefore is more efficient than every single person being able to make decisions and can often free up people to focus on their own work or lives. While oligarchies may free up others to focus on their craft or daily lives, they often tend to skew decisions and policies to benefit themselves. In that manner, oligarchies tend to increase income inequality, which helps the oligarchy grow in power and wealth. Along these lines, oligarchies can often manipulate the financial markets to their advantage, even if they are not natural or do not comply with the rules of supply and demand. Additionally, oligarchies can perpetuate bad policy by keeping those who are similar to them in power, which can create an unhealthy government community. What about oligarchies throughout history? There have been countless oligarchies wielding their power over governments for centuries. As far back as 600 BCE, Greek city-states sported aristocracies, which, as you remember, are oligarchies made up of the elite class in Sparta and Athens. Moreover, another antiquated example is Venice during the 14th century, where rich nobles called the patricians controlled all the financial and political affairs of the city-state. But Greece wasn't the only one. Russia has long been considered an oligarchy up until 1991, but many argue it still is. In fact, all communist regimes could be considered oligarchies, where the few in power make executive decisions for the rest of the country or regime, often for their personal benefit or agenda. Throughout the Soviet Union, an oligarchy was in place to manage affairs often suited mostly for the most powerful and wealthy. So let's talk about oligarchies today. Several modern-day governments are alleged oligarchies. People have even claimed President Trump as an oligarch. The real problem with Trump isn't that he is sympathetic to Russian oligarchs, it's that he is a Russian oligarch, albeit one who happens to be American. However, President Trump isn't the only one. Russia has been accused of being a mega oligarchy, with dozens of influential members seemingly molding the government to fit their interest. In fact, CNN recently published a name and shame list of all the Russian oligarchs who rose to power and are supported by current President Vladimir Putin. The list is quite extensive and makes it seem as though the antiquated form of government is long from dead, The billionaires of Russia seem only able to gain and sustain their wealth by approving of and supporting the government. Other notable oligarchies include post-Mao China, when an oligarchy assumes control of the country, and Saudi Arabia seems to boast a similar government structure, with the king appointing 2 of his sons to high positions controlling oil prices and other major policy. So then, is the US an oligarchy? Some have argued that the US is actually an oligarchy, and according to a study published in 2014, some researchers believe so too. Americans do enjoy many features central to democratic governance, such as regular elections, freedom of speech and association, and a widespread, if still contested, franchise. But if policy making is dominated by powerful business organizations and a small number of affluent Americans, then America's claim to being a democratic society are seriously threatened. The rich and the average citizen frequently want the same thing, but when they disagree, and they do disagree on many important issues, the rich usually get their way. If democracy means that all citizens should have a say in shaping government policy, there is some doubt on just how democratic US policymaking actually is. So some researchers have concluded that despite the democratic processes put in place to ensure an even balance of power, it may be the wealthy and elite who are the movers and shakers in forming policy. And while this may not be conclusive evidence that America is actually an oligarchy, it's certainly worth further inspection. So what are your thoughts? Is the US an oligarchy disguised as a republic? Leave a comment down below and let's get a discussion started. And as always, take care of your money.